because we have with us Professor Sihag as the chief guest, who has done pioneering work on Kautilya, who is known as true founder of economics. But we all know that we economists in India and across the world grew up hearing the name of Adam Smith as the father of economics, but never heard or studied the great economist of our country, or perhaps the world, that is Kautilya, who wrote Arthashastra much before all these Greek economists, perhaps around 2500 years ago. His book talks about economics based on ethics and good governance. Professor Balbir Sihag has made an outstanding contribution in creating awareness about Kautilya not only in India but also in the West, whose contributions have been ignored till recently. Kautilya's contributions to economics have been ignored to such an extent. It is very interesting to observe that even we do not find Kautilya's name in the literature on history of economic thought. In this context, I feel it is appropriate to mention about the new education policy 2020 announced by the Indian government, which is designed beautifully. I think all the participants should go through it, which is designed beautifully based on the rich heritage of ancient and eternal Indian knowledge and thoughts. This new education policy of the 21st century proposes that the Indian culture and philosophy that have had a strong influence on the world must not only be nurtured and preserved for the prosperity, but also researched, enhanced, and put to new uses through our education system. As a part of this endeavor, I am very proud to appraise the august gathering that we, the Department of Economics at Central University of Karnataka, introduced Kautilya Arthashastra as a core course to our postgraduate students. The books and research articles written by Professor Balbir Sihag and other resource persons of this workshop have been prescribed as compulsory reading material for our students. I take this opportunity to thank all the resource persons for their rich contribution to the economics literature. It is my privilege to mention here the remarkable book written by Professor Sihag, titled as Kautilya, the true founder of economics, in which, with his perfect mastery of modern economics, Professor explains and interprets Kautilya's original ideas and demonstrates very successfully their relevance and importance to the present day societies. I feel all the participants should read once this book, which is highly knowledge enriching. Such an eminent scholar is amidst us today to deliver a keynote address. I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Balbir Sihag on my behalf and on behalf of the Central University of Karnataka to this program. Welcome to you, sir. It is my pleasure to welcome all the distinguished resource persons to this program who will be enriching the academia through rich discourse on different aspects of Kautilya Arthashastra during the next 2 days. I welcome them on my behalf and on behalf of Central University of Karnataka. I am happy to announce that our resource persons, Professor Balakrishna, Professor Manohar Rao, Colonel Pradeep Kumar Gautam, Dr. Acharya, and Shri S. Gurumurthy, all these have worked extensively on Kautilya Arthashastra and contributed richly to the literature. A warm welcome to you all. It is my pleasure to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Central University of Karnataka, Professor M. V. Alagavadi, who is presiding this inaugural session. It is with his constant support and encouragement we are able to organize this workshop. Sir, I welcome you on my behalf and on behalf of the Department of Economics for this program. I also welcome Professor Basavaraj Donur, Registrar, Central University of Karnataka, to this program, who has been always supportive in all our academic activities. I welcome you on my behalf and on behalf of the department. I take the pleasure to welcome my young and dynamic colleague, Dr. Lingamurthy, whose tireless efforts have crystallized into this workshop. Welcome to Dr. Murthy. I also feel happy to welcome all my friends, colleagues, and students from different universities across India and abroad who are participating in this program. My warm welcome to faculty, non-teaching, and dear students of Central University of Karnataka for this program. I welcome you all to this program and I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak few words. Thank you one and all. Over to Murthy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your enlightening welcome address. Now it's my pleasure to give citation of Professor Balbir Singh Sihag, who has received master's degree in economics from Punjab University, Chandigarh, and ranked got the first rank at the university level. And he has awarded UGC scholarship, merit selection to the Indian Economic Service, received PhD in economics from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, USA, and professor of economics at University of Massachusetts for 22 years, and now Professor Emeritus of Economics. He received Outstanding Research Paper Award and Best Teacher Award and has published research papers in journals of international repute, including Account Change, History of Political Economy, Humanomics, Indian Journal of Agricultural Economics, International Journal of Hindu Studies, Indian Journal of Economics and Business, Indian Economic Review, Journal of History of Economic Thought, Journal of Public Economics and Quarterly Accounting, Agricultural Economics, and so on. He has published several books, and as our HOD may mention, particularly in this context on Kautilya Arthashastra, he has published two books, that Kautilya, a pioneer economist, that the true founder of economics, published by Vitasta Publications, New Delhi, and second book recently on Kautilya on moral hazard, poverty, and systemic risk. And along with these two books, he has published more than 25 articles which were published in Emerald and other international repute journals. And after having gone through his books and articles, we were confident to have a complete semester course. That's what we made compulsory paper, as our HOD may mention. So with this brief introduction of respected Professor Balbir Sihag, I would like to invite him and to guide us in the field of Kautilya Arthashastra and bless with your lecture, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Should I, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Now let me start with some concepts. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's a great idea to introduce our own things to our students. So that's a wonderful idea. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Now, asymmetric information. Professor Akrolov, he got a Nobel Prize for that. But actually, Chanakya should have gotten it if he was alive.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Now, how Chanakya or Kautilya got the idea of asymmetric information and how he extended that. He got the idea from Mahabharata because Vidur, he was having a better bow than Arjun. Nobody could have defeated Vidur if he had participated in the war. And only Lord Krishna knew that. So when he went there for a peace mission, so instead of staying with Duryodhana, he stayed with Vidur. And that annoyed Duryodhana, and he ridiculed and really insulted Vidur. So in protest, he left Hastinapur and went away. And he never participated in the war. Had he participated in the war, Pandavas, they could not have won. Because Vidur was more powerful than Arjuna. So that is asymmetric information. But what Lord Krishna knew, he knew everything about the other side, about the Kauravas. But they didn't know anything about the Pandavas. That was one asymmetric information, that when you know everything and the other party doesn't know much about you, then you have a comparative advantage. You can defeat the other side. So that's what he learned from Mahabharata. And second thing he learned from Mahabharata, because he always talks about a good advisor. Because Lord Krishna gave a choice to Duryodhana that you want me or you want my army. And he thought that he's a useless fellow, why I will take his army. And that was also very critical. A good advisor is very essential for prosperity and also for power. So those kind of ideas he got from Mahabharata. The other thing Kautilya got from Mahabharata, like in Gita, in chapter 18, there is just one shlok where they talk about economics, that the success of any project depends on the initial conditions, on the worker, the doer, also what kind of choice of techniques they are going to adopt, and what is the effort involved, and finally, Devam, the unknown factors. They just mentioned all these 5 factors, but what Kautilya did, he divided them into policy variables with the effort, choice of techniques, everything is involved, and the Devam, the unknown variables. And nowadays we call that analysis of variance. It was more than 2,000 years earlier he had the concept of analysis of variance. And all this regression, everything depends on that. He was that far ahead, and whatever he got from Mahabharata, from Gita, from other sources, he extended that. The concept of bounded personality, it was already there, but he extended that, and how to extend that, how to remove those limits. So he got a lot of ideas from earlier writers, like all the factors of production had been identified before Kautilya, but he saw them as a source of growth of GDP. So he extended those things considerable in many, many areas. So asymmetric information, he not only used that for defense, but he also used that for economics. That if there is some land which is good for nothing, so first sell it, and the other party, they will make some improvement, and finally you acquire it back. So that was the concept of asymmetric information. One
Sir,
party knows everything, the other party knows very little about it.
Sir, please switch off another apparatus. If there are two, the sound will rebound. Please use only one.
I can hear my own. Okay, now, okay. So asymmetric information, the law, that the person who owns the car, he wants to sell it, he gets all the information that it stops. It is not a good car, but buyer doesn't know much. So this is called asymmetric information. So the buyer doesn't want to few miles on the paper. So he wants to pay only the average price. So that's like all the good cars are taken out of the market and only the lemons are left. Similarly, in healthcare insurance, all the people who are healthy, who run marathons, they don't want to pay those kind of premium. So only those who are really who need help, only they are left. So the market system doesn't work when there is asymmetric information. So this is a market failure. Government has to intervene in that. Similarly, moral hazard problem. These are market failures. Moral hazard, like assistant professor works very hard, gets a tenure, and then relaxes. Or a government employee, he got tenured, and then he stops really working that hard. So this is a moral hazard, and Chanakya understood that, and he suggested both the legal ways, supervision and other things, but also good wages, and also the moral incentives. That it is your moral duty to fulfill your responsibility, be a good citizen. So he added both the dimensions to that. Like chapter 11 in my book deals with that kind of idea. So the market doesn't work because market means that you pay wage should equal to the marginal revenue product of the employee. But if the person is shirking, so he's getting higher wages than he's contributing. So the market system fails. So these are the modern concept of market failure. The earlier, the public goods, externalities, those kind of, and monopoly, those are the traditional ones. And even Adam Smith mentions those, the earlier ones, the traditional ones, but he never provides any solution. Chanakya was a different kind of economist. Always he dealt with the problem and also provided a solution, like a regulation of monopoly. Actually, it was so advanced that America almost copied it in 1913. The Clayton Act is precisely what is written in the Arthashastra. He was that advanced. So these are some of the concepts which are very important. And Kautilya, he had concepts already and he applied them. So let me come back to my, and also Dr. Murthy asked about economics and ethics. What's the role of ethics in economics? And there, let me mention some of them. I define a concept, Kautilya's ethical surplus. It's a new concept of Kautilya's ethical surplus. What it means is that if the society is ethic based, what will be the GDP? and compare that to the GDP when it's just the contract based like the Western type. So I see the difference between those. I call that Kautilya's ethical difference. And how it comes about? There are so many sources. If people are ethical, then there is no need for supervisors because employees, they do not steal or shirk work. There's no need for a corporate board of directors because CEOs, they will be, if they are ethical, you don't need the board of directors. Doctors do not need any, do not carry out any unnecessary operations. Bank managers do not take excessive risk if they are ethical. Stockbrokers take care of their investors' interest, not their own interest. Drug companies do not push harmful opioids. And public servants, they formulate and implement good sound policies. So I call that ethical surplus. And it could be in billions and billions of rupees. So ethics is very critical. Law and order, good governance, they depend all on ethics. And if we don't have that, we have the Western type of the constitution, which doesn't ask for that the prime minister or the president, they should be ethical, they should be intelligent, they should be educated. There's no requirement. So how can we have good governance? And we see that everywhere. Now let me come back to my topic. Power and prosperity. That was really the theme of the Arthashastra. He realized that nation under slavery can never prosper. So independence was very critical for prosperity. And we know that when Britishers took over, per capita income was 547 rupees. When they left in 1947, it was 547 rupees. For almost 200 years, there was absolutely no growth in GDP, per capita GDP. So Kautilya, he could see that more than 2,000 years earlier, that under slavery, no nation could ever prosper. It started from that premise. And then he realized that to protect freedom, to protect independence, GDP must be higher, otherwise you don't have the resources to protect freedom. Like I give the example of China, their GDP is 3-4 times that of India. And that means they can buy our neighbors, they can spend more money on infrastructure, they can spend more money on R&D. How India is going to compete with them? So we have to have a very high rate of GDP growth if we really want to be staying independent forever. So that's very critical. So that's how Karnataka started, that respect comes from power and power comes from prosperity. Why United States is so powerful? Because their GDP is pretty high and China is trying to catch up with them. Soviet Union, they disintegrated because their GDP was declining instead of rising. So we see all over, we see Pakistan, where they are going. They mortgage the country to China. It's too bad. Their children and grandchildren, basically, they will not be that free. So India has to work hard to prosper. That's the key, to respect and all the other resources we have, whether it's in the ocean or anywhere else. We have to have access to that, and that means that we have to be prosper. We have to have relative power. Only then we can succeed in our mission. So how Kautilya approach this topic, that how we can prosper? He had a very logical mind, very logical. That what is our goal? Yog Shame, peaceful enjoyment of prosperity. That whatever we have, Yog Shame is two parts. preservation and acquisition. That what we have, we shouldn't lose that and try to acquire more. That's the true definition of Yogshem. And that concept came from Gita. Lord Krishna gives that all my devotees, he will provide Yogshem to them. That whatever they have, he will preserve that, and whatever they don't have, he will provide them. So Kautilya got the concept from Gita. But Vedvyas, he was not an economist. He was a spiritual leader. So he just left there. But Kautilya, he wanted practical. That should be the responsibility of the king, a Raja Rishi, who can provide Yogshem, who can take care of the public. So God knows whether he believed in God or not, but he was very ethical. And he created a Raja Rishi who can provide Yogshem to his public. That is such an original concept. The United States introduced this concept in 1946. Kautilya had that concept 4th century BC. Actually, he was more than earlier than that. Because what I found in my research, that many concepts he even borrowed from the Indus Valley civilization. Many concepts, whether it was the measurements or other things, like buffer stocks. I'm sure he got the idea from the Indus Valley civilization because they had the granaries. They had the big stores to keep grains. So he got that idea from them, I'm sure. So he was much earlier than 4th century BC because he never mentions about Megdha or Chandragupta Maurya or anyone else. So it was a theoretical book. Well, that we can talk some other day. So he had the 5 steps how to bring prosperity. So there is a goal. It's like going to the Mars. How do you go to Mars? What should be the next step? Well, have a location on the moon. How to go to the moon? Have the International Space Station. And we can easily go to the International Space Station from Earth. So this is called backward induction. Start from your target, that how to reach the target, what should be the next one? To reach this target, what should be the next one? So he devised 5 steps to get prosperity. So the first was setting the goal, and then what are the sources of growth? Land, labor, capital. So he identified the sources of growth, and then how to expand them, how to increase their supply. So he developed the concept of that it depends on rate of return and reduction of risk. So that's the second stage. Now, how you reduce the risk? That there should be rule of law. If people are not protected, if they work hard all day and at night someone comes with a gun and take away everything, why anybody will work? And that's happening in Afghanistan, in Iraq, where there is no security, no safety. So the rule of law was very critical for him. So that reduces the risk. Now, what about the rate of return? That's where he suggested that we should have good roads, we should have market towns, and we should have water supply for the farmers, irrigation facilities. So he suggested all those things, that how to increase the rate of return, how to reduce the risk. And then he moved further, that all these rule of law and governance, they depend on a good ethical Raja Rishi. So that was the 4th stage, that only a Raja Rishi can assure good governance and rule of law. Now, how you make a Raja Rishi? How you create a Raja Rishi? Now, in a democratic system, every child could be a prime minister, could be a president, could be anything. So you have to educate all the kids and how you make them a Raja Rishi. What should be our educational system? Now, in our educational system right now, we emphasize skills, whether it's an engineering college or it's other departments, we emphasize just on the skills, on the knowledge part. But Kautilya would go much beyond that. Sure, you need knowledge, how to do things, but why to do things? That's where he spent a lot of time. And that is, if you look at the Arthashastra, all these 5 steps, finally, it ends up. Let me read something else. That why he insisted on good education. Now, Vidura, he was a wise man, and he's replying to a question to Dhritarashtra. Let me read that paragraph. This is Vidur saying in Mahabharata that there are 5. Yeah, I can hear you. Should I keep talking?
Please
Please
continue.
go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. There are 5 different kinds of power. He's replying to Dhritarashtra. Physical strength is regarded as the most inferior kind. The acquisition of good counsel is regarded as the second kind of power. The power of wealth is the third. The power of the power of power of privilege is acquired by birth. Yeah. Please mute yours. The power of privilege acquired by birth is regarded as the fourth. However, by which all these are achieved, which is the foremost of all kinds of power, is called the power of intellect. So Vidur is emphasizing that intellect is the most power, the highest power in, and he graded all those other ones. Physical power is very inferior and so on. Now Kautilya accepted that. And this is what he says, Kautilya, that prosperity depends on intellect. This was Vidur's part, that prosperity depends on intellect. So he borrowed that from Mahabharata. This is Vidur's statement. But what intellect depends on? Vidur does not answer that question. So he says that prosperity depends on the intellect, but intellect depends on education. So the education is the critical element in prosperity. And there, he divorce actually starts after from education, because that's the key to prosperity. When BJP says सबका साथ, सबका विकास is not possible unless the intellect also is involved in that process. Without growth of intellect, you cannot have vikas of the country, you cannot have prosperity. And that part is still missing in our education. Our education system, it started in 1858 and it is still continuing the same education system. So we emphasize skills, which is critical, but what are the other elements of good education? And that's where he starts with wisdom, philosophy. That's the first chapter in the Arthashastra. If you look at it, the first chapter is just the contents. So that's really not a chapter. It's just lists the contents of Arthashastra. So the real Arthashastra starts from the second chapter, which is on philosophy. That how you make people wise, how they acquire wisdom. So that's the very first chapter. So he gives a lot of importance to education, and in education to acquisition of wisdom. And all through Arthashastra, he emphasizes the importance of wisdom all along. And I have many examples also in the book. So that's chapter first actually in the Arthashastra. Now, what next? The next chapter, chapter 3, which is on Vedic education, on ethics. So that's the second chapter. So he emphasizes wisdom and ethics. And only then he comes to knowledge, economics and political science.
ಏನ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ ಅದು ನನ್ನಂತ ಅಜ್ಞಾತವತ್ತ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಸೈ ಮಾಡ್ಸಕತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡೀನಿ ಈಗಾಗ್ಲೇ ಆದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದನ್ನ ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತ ನಾನು 5ನೇ ನಂಬರ್ಗೆ 6ಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ರು 6ನೇ ನಂಬರ್ 5ಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ರು ನನಗೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ ನೋಡಿದೀನಿ ನಾನೇ
Please, others, please.
I request the organizers to unmute the all people. Right now, I can see that Sharana Basappa is talking a lot. Please don't disturb the speaker. And Professor Balbir Singh Sihag sir, he is giving his in-depth research.
Sorry.
Please don't do that. I request the organizers to take the technical issues and just mute everybody, including their videos.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please go
So
ahead.
education, our own education, at this point, that is based on really on the Western type of education. And we should come back to our own thinking, our own educational system, which Kautilya insisted more than 20, 30, 100 years ago, that wisdom and ethics, those should be the key elements of any kind of education. Then only we can have a Raja Rishi. Every child could be a Raja Rishi. How he trained Chandragupta Maurya, made him a Raja Rishi, not a small king of a small kingdom, but an empire, an emperor of a big, large country. How did he educate him? So if we follow his instructions, we can educate every child to be a Raja Rishi, someone who is wise and ethical. And then India will be our really a real old type of India where all full of glory and prosperity. So that's a whole topic, and everybody really should try to think about that how we can improve our education system. So Raja Rishi, everything depends on good governance, rule of law, and that depends on if the lawmakers and enforcers, if they are ethical, everything will be ethical. Like we talk about trust. Trust is a concept which arises only in an ethical society. When people are honest and truthful, so trust depends on honesty and truthfulness of individuals. Right now, what is going on? Everybody rationalizes that if I don't cheat others, others are going to cheat me anyway. That's the wrong kind of logic. So the milkman is very happy by adding water. Someday he falls sick, goes to the doctor. Doctor is very happy in giving him half the injection. So the patient neither lives, nor he survives. He's unhealthy all his life. So this concept of that cheating each other, that is not going to help India prosper. That's one of the main defects in our education system, because we never teach any ethics. We don't teach wisdom, how we acquire wisdom. So those are elements that will need a whole separate lecture. And maybe someday I might offer that. But in the meantime, now, Dr. Lingamurthy, he asked me that there are some questions our students would like to know, like how one can prove that Chanakya was ahead of his times. Okay, so let us talk about that. How he was ahead of his times. Nowadays, sexual harassment is one of the serious problems in any workplace, university, everywhere. It's a problem. Now, Chanakya at that time, he's talking about sexual harassment and how to prevent it at that time. So he was that far ahead because a lot of widows, they were dependent on the government help. They were given some yarn and they used to weave them. And the person who was in charge of that, he was not even allowed to see the face of the woman. Yeah, so that was, at that time, he was instructing that there should be no sexual harassment. And if someone does that, there was a punishment. Similarly, he talks about child labor, that a child should not be working until a certain age. He was that ahead of child labor laws, preventing child labor, laws about preventing sexual harassment, and also he was for consumer protection. So finally the son is here. Now consumer protection. In those days, many those who used to lend money, money lenders, they used to buy sheep from the farmers who don't have any staying power and then sell. And then sell. And then sell at a higher price. So there was both a problem of monopsony when there is just one buyer, and a question, and also a monopoly when there's just one seller. So he passed laws at that time that how to prevent them. So regulation of monopoly and monopsony, that was his idea at that time. It took thousands of years to realize that monopoly and monopsony, they are bad for the marketplace. They are bad for consumers. They are bad for the producers. So at that time, he introduced that. So actually, he had a model of what we call nowadays stakeholders model. That was already implicit in Arthashastra. And similarly, he was for labor unions. And if the work is not good, while then a worker can refuse. So he was for labor rights. He was for consumer protection against sexual harassment, against child labor. So that was at that time pretty advanced. Even now we are struggling with those kind of problems today. So he had, he was a very far-sighted person. So that was one of the questions someone asked. And then some other concepts, other theories which are relevant in today, like the concept of Yog Shame has two components, preservation and acquisition. Now, what are those two parts? What's the theory behind that? Nowadays, we call that loss aversion. That a person, he wants to make sure that what he has is protected. Only then he will invest in such a project where the rate of return is far higher than expected return, far higher than the expected loss. We call that loss aversion. And that is nothing but Yog Shame. Preservation and only then acquisition. So that's a very conservative approach, but that was the approach at that time. And Kautilya had actually this loss aversion, Professor Daniel Kahneman, he got a Nobel Prize for that concept. And he had the concept of bounded rationality, and that the king should hire advisors to relax that constraint of bounded rationality. And Professor Simon, he got a Nobel Prize for that. So all those concepts are still relevant. And there are many more that people make promises and they don't keep them. So then we call that time inconsistency or problem of that someone is not credible. Kautilya had that at that time. And Professor Keel and Prescott, they got a Nobel Prize for that. So all those things are still relevant. Like government promises something and never delivers. So they are not consistent. You can't trust them. They are not credible. So all those things are also similarly, like in our law books, we say that if you steal, you will get jail for 3 years. Okay, the person steals. And then what happened? We find a lot of ways to give him parole. Somehow we want to get rid of him from the jail so that we can save money. So society is not really keeping its promise to punish somebody and then finds ways to reduce that punishment. This is a very important concept in some other ways, that like monetary policy. Should we make some promise and keep them? Then you don't need the Reserve Bank governor, because we can have a rule that money supply will increase every year by 4% or 5%. Then you don't need the Reserve Bank governor. Should we allow discretion? If there is a recession or inflation, what kind of powers we want to give to the Reserve Bank? Under consistency, we shouldn't give any power. We shouldn't give any power similarly to a judge. You fix the rule, 3 years jail for this crime, and keep it. No discretion after that. So it's a very fundamental concept. And Chanakya had that, and he applied that very successfully. So all those things, what he was talking at that time, they are still relevant. And similarly, crime and punishment. Professor Becker, he got a Nobel Prize for that, but Kautilya actually had a lot more than that. According to Becker, that you punish one person, kill him, prosecute him, hang him, and that will save 100,000 lives. Kautilya said, no, society doesn't want that. There should be some optimum kind of punishment. You cannot be that cruel to whoever the criminal is. So all those things, he could have got a Nobel Prize for them. And similarly, he talks about rich governance. So at that time, he was aware of that expected return and risk. They are relevant factors in owning or investing in any asset. And later on, Markovich got a Nobel Prize for that. So Kautilya could have gotten a lot of Nobel Prizes. And another important concept, which he talks in, which actually was even before Kautilya, that pooling of information and knowledge. So that's a concept for the teamwork, that everybody can't know everything. So someone might know physics, someone might know chemistry, someone might know something else, and you pull them together. And that's how a team works. That different people have different information, they have different background, they have different knowledge base, and you pull them. And that's how we have better products, more research done. So that concept, actually, it was already there before he took over. So he, in many directions, not only was way ahead of Adam Smith, but also he contributed and continued whatever was knowledge he acquired from his predecessors, and then he contributed a lot to that. And one thing important about Chanakya was that learn even from a child. That if someone is arrogant, that person can never learn anything, because he thinks that he knows everything. So there's no need to learn anything more. So that was the starting point of Chanakya, that be humble. That's the way to learn. That's the way to proceed. If you are arrogant that you know everything, and then that person is not going to learn much. And that's how really that helped me personally a lot. Because my ego should not come in the way of promoting Kautilya's ideas. I'm always behind because these are all Kautilya's ideas. This is not my creation. This is not my contribution. My contribution is very minimal. These are original ideas of Chanakya. And he gives credit to his predecessors and very humble person. That's how researchers moves forward. And that helped me in writing my book. Like the main theme of the book was that Kautilya is the true founder of economics, my first book. That was done in chapter 3. There was no need for any other chapter. Just chapter 3 alone takes care of that part. Because what they used to say, that Adam Smith wrote a book, he was the first one to write a book. Well, Chanakya was the first one to write a book. And then that he provided synthesis of the existing ideas. Well, Chanakya also provided that. And then Adam Smith doesn't add a single concept to economics, not a single concept, and was very inconsistent. On the other hand, Kautilya added dozens of new concepts, and he was very consistent. What he said in the first page 1, that was the same thing on last page. Very consistent. So that was all done in chapter 3. So what was needed then? What was needed was those 2 chapters in the Arthashastra, that wisdom and ethics. And I wanted to give a title to the book, Kautilya's Dharmanomics, economics based on ethics. So the rest of the book is basically like chapter 6. It's connecting between the first part and the second part. That Dharmanomics, that economics based on ethics. That's the real theme of our Shastra. Raja Rishi, most ethical person, and how he should make one a child, a Raja Rishi, and what kind of policies that Raja Rishi will follow, whether it's a tax policy or labor policy or trade policy, everywhere ethics is involved. So that Dharmanomics part took me quite a while because that was not my field. Because in economics, they don't talk about ethics. Why? Because ethics is in the bones. That's the thing. Ethics is in the bones. Ethics equations, mathematical equations cannot capture ethics. So most of economics is just amoral. There are 3 categories: amoral, moral, and immoral. So most of the economics is for amoral. They are just utility maximizers, nothing beyond that. They just take care of their own interests and nothing beyond that. But ethics takes care of not only their own interests, but also of others' interests. And there's nothing like that in economics, because you cannot have ethics into equations, because this is in the bones, this is in the heart, basically. So that's a separate thing altogether, ethics. So this Dharmanomics, that took me quite a while, and I got a lot of help from a lot of people. Even I got a nice letter from Dr. Karan Singh, of all the people. Very, very nice letter. And similarly, Dr. Ravi Prakash Arya, he was a Vedic scholar. He reviewed my chapter 6, and that was very helpful. And I, of course, thanked him. But another big help is I'm talking about that you learn from everybody. Your ego should not come in the way. I sent a chapter to a professor in Australia, totally unknown. Still, I've not seen him, not met him. Sent a paper to him. And he said that you are making all these tall claims that Chanakya is the true founder of economics. Oh, by the way, why I'm saying founder? Because women don't like the concept of father. So they prefer to call it founder of economics, not father of economics. So that's fine. So I wrote a letter to Professor Azad, and he wrote me back, a total stranger. And he said that you are making tall claims, but you got to justify that. Because you go to any, in Delhi, there is a temple, and then they say Kautilya, the father of economics, but you got to justify. Just simply making a claim without justification is, people call it ridiculous. They make fun of you. So that's where he gave me the direction that if you want to challenge Adam Smith, this is what you need to do. You got to justify that Kautilya is truly the father of economics or founder of economics. So he outlined the framework, and I'm so glad I wrote to him. So I wrote to so many people, and I got so much help. So these are all Kautilya's ideas. The question was how you articulate them, how you make available to the people today. So this articulation, that was the only contribution I have. All these ideas are Kautilya's ideas. I have really not added anything. Maybe I might have subtracted something out of his original thinking because his depth. Let me clarify. Sure, I know more tools of economics, but that's the technical part. So far insights are concerned, I got a PhD from MIT, but believe me, the insights Kautilya had, I still don't have. So what I learned, my father-in-law gave me this book, Arthashastra, and I don't know what another copy I got. So I had two copies, and I gave one to Professor Samuelson, and he looked at it, and I asked a question: does it have opportunity cost? Because that was his yardstick. If a person doesn't know opportunity cost, he's not an economist. You are here, what you are giving up. So that's the opportunity cost of your time listening to me instead of doing something more worthwhile, maybe. So that got me started. So I wrote a paper, totally non-technical, and submitted to a journal, rejected. Submit to the other journal, rejected. So I tried so many places, nobody will publish it. I got really disappointed that here is a book which is so full of ideas, concepts, and nobody is willing to publish it. 2 years went by. One day, the Buddha movement, enlightenment. I teach so many courses, and Adam Smith, Ricardo, they never had any idea of any equation. But we use equations to explain comparative advantage and other things. Now, well, if they can use for Ricardo, why I can't use for Kautilya? So I was in business. So I wrote a book just within a year. And Professor Bhagwati said, he was my thesis supervisor, Jagdish Bhagwati, that submitted to Oxford University Press. Well, I did. I did it, wrote a very nice letter for me. And Oxford University Press was very interested in publishing it. But they sent the manuscript to an economist in England. And he said that you got to change the title. And you got to say that Kautilya was great, but Adam Smith was greater. Well, listen, I'm not going to lie for a publication. No way. So I withdrew it. And then my wife, she's very smart. She gave the idea. She's a physician. She said that you are giving too many things to a patient. The patient will die. So what you do, give in small doses. So I took a couple of concepts, wrote a paper, published it. Take the next two concepts, publish a paper. So I published 31 papers. And then she said, now you can put together into books. So her smartness and my stubbornness, that is the product, this book you can see, both the books. So her ideas, they were very helpful. So it's the humbleness that whatever you can receive, you should be receptive, open mind. And I listen to so many people, and I'm so glad that this book finally got printed. And all these foreign companies here, Oxford, Cambridge, all, they are the foreign agents. They will not publish anything which promotes Indian civilization. I can give you that in writing. Anything they will publish which supports them because their headquarters are outside India and they control everything here. But finally the book is out. Very happy that the first print was already sold out. Now the second print you might see. So that's how I got started into this. And when I first published my article, sent to the referee questioned that how can you call him an economist? He was not an economist. He's dealing with economics. What's the definition of an economist? So I had to delete the word economist from my first paper. They are that particular. They don't want to accept that there was someone else. And that too in the 4th century and in India, who can be called an economist. Well, that's okay. Someday I will settle that. So that's how they are so against giving credit to anyone else other than themselves. So in that paper, that's chapter 3, I sent to a professor in Canada, and he became so furious that Adam Smith had nothing, he learned nothing from Chanakya, nothing, zero contribution from Chanakya. Well, he wrote the book 2,300 years ago, and it doesn't take that kind of time before ideas travel. But there got to be some link, what Kautilya wrote and what Chanakya wrote. And I started comparing them, and I was quite pleasantly surprised that some of the things which Adam Smith says, Kautilya is already in the Arthashastra. The sources of growth, principle of taxation, ideas on monopoly, all those things. And this paper, that Kautilya Arthashastra, a recognizable source of wealth of nations, it has been downloaded 20,000 times. That's at least I got that number, but there may be others who are not recorded in that research gate. So that's how the first thing is never give up what you believe in. And I was not interested in publication as such. I was interested in bringing out the true contribution of Chanakya. That was the only thing I was interested in. And to fulfill that idea, I had to give up my job. I resigned. I was tenured professor, full-time professor, and all I did, 54 days was my assignment for the whole year. I went to college, to university for 54 days, and on those 54 days, I was there just from 8:30 to 2:30, and still, I just gave up that, resigned from that, and started working on the Arthashastra. Any royalties I get, that goes to charity. I'm not into making money. If I wanted to make money, I should have stayed as a professor or do something else. So everything, not a penny I make out of it, it goes to charity. And I'm totally devoted to bringing out our civilization, not just economics or Kautilya Arthashastra. Also, I'm working on Indus Valley civilization. And next topic will be something on our medical contribution. We have a lot of contribution in medicine. and that should be brought out. So I bought all those volumes of Sihag and Sushruth. Those are already there, and I'm working on them. So, so that's my whatever life is left, that will be devoted to that, and I get good support from my family. My wife is always there to give me ideas and also to take care of me in every possible way. So if you have any questions, I'll be now.
Sir, hello.
Sir, hello,
Hello.
sir.
Hello.
Yeah, there's one.
Gopal,
Yeah,
hello.
one more thing I may say, that Chanakya was not, forget about the classicals. He was way ahead even of the neoclassicals. Chapter 4 in my book deals with that part. For example, opportunity cost. The neoclassical, they always believed that it was positive. But Kautilya said no, it could be zero also. So he was way ahead even of the neoclassicals.
Sir, thank you for your wonderful presentation, sir. I have gone through your article on Kautilya's proactive and pragmatic approach on national security. In that article, you have mentioned that only in the 1850 that various aspects were taken from the Kautilya's book. But as I have read, though it was in the period of 2nd to 3rd century BC, it was only traced and published by Shama Shastri in 1905. Your reference, is it from the Sanskrit study that you have made? And because English translation came only in 1950.
Yes. Let me explain that part. All the three translations are not really perfect. And let me explain that. Like in Hindi, we say that wo paise kha gaya. You understand Hindi, right? Ki wo paise kha gaya. But how we translate it in English? We cannot translate that as he ate money, because that makes no sense, right? In Hindi, we can say a lot of things. So that is the problem. So there, what this Rangarajan does, he gives a better explanation, much better clarity. It may not be that authentic, but it's very clear. So what I did, I had to read all three of them, and I have all of them. I have the Sanskrit version also, and the translations also, all three of them, including Sama Shastri and Rangarajan. But also, even then, that was not enough. Then I consulted some Sanskrit scholars. Okay, like that, one of the shlokas from Gita, I explained that, like in chapter 18, shloka number 14 in Gita. That's the only slok which talks about some economics. Now, this slok, if you look at Dr. Radhakrishnan's translation, any other translations, those make no sense whatsoever. So I had to consult some other then. So these three books, I have them and I read them. Actually, I read them maybe every time I write an article, I have to read that. So I have 31 articles, so I've read them 31 times. But still, I consult someone else, because Kautilya was never inconsistent. And the way they translate that, sometimes it makes no sense. So then I consult other scholars. And fortunately, I have access to them. So this shalok, go back to Gita and read any of translations. They make no sense. But here, it's very clear that sources of any success of any project depends on 5 factors: initial conditions, what is called the sthanam, doer, the worker, karta, That's there in the sloka. And choice of different techniques, vivid kind of techniques, and then managerial efforts. What kind of chesta they are making. So very clear. And then devam, those are unknown factors. Okay, I call them devam. And they translate that that's a previous birth or something, all kind of other things, which makes no sense. So this is how I got some ideas from other scholars. And then now it makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate.
There are five factors. 4 are under the control of human beings, but the devam part, that's unknown. There are a lot of unknown factors. There may be firestorms or any other kind of, like pandemic. These are all random things. Devam. Now the Chanakya went further than that these are policy variables and this is unknown. And he called that analysis of variance. That's a unique contribution. He had the concept, but he didn't know how to calculate them. That's a different part.
Yeah, I was very much amused by the word that you have used. Chanakya, I mean, Kautilya was a one-man planning commission. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, all those things he did. Yeah, he was a unique person. He had a total perspective on the whole economy. And not only that you work hard, you have secure, you have everything. And then these random factors like pandemic. These are all, some are natural, some are man-made. Like aggression, this is man-made. How you take care of that part also.
And regarding pandemic and natural calamities, Kautilya, he says that it is the duty of the government to look after whenever the problem arises during the pandemic.
Yes, because at that time there was no insurance market. Not only that if a thief is not caught, then it was the responsibility of the Raja Rishi to refund that to that person. So that was a different kind of system. Actually, my paper, Kautilya on administration of justice during the 4th century BC, that also has been downloaded by 11,000 times. Very popular paper. And another paper on law of torts, I sent to a judge, Judge Portner, well-known judge in America. And I was not expecting any reply from him. And he replied 2-3 days later. That is a fantastic paper. And what is the fantastic part about it? Before Chanakya, everything was that the person, the defendant, he should do the penance. Okay, only the ethical part was there, the penance part. But if someone, and that was all voluntary. But if someone doesn't do that, then what? So Kautilya just added as a complement to that, not a substitute, but as a complement to whatever was already there. That also you can put a fine on him. And another interesting thing which Kautilya did, now before Kautilya, they used to cut the nose of the defendant for certain crimes. And as a consequence of that, Sushruth, the surgeon, he developed a technique to fix it. So there were people who were hired to cut the nose, and then the surgeons, they were there to fix it. So the whole purpose that it was like a scarlet letter, that someone with a cut nose, everybody will know that he did something horrible. So all that was gone. So what Chanakya did, that you are hiring people to cut the nose, then you are hiring surgeons to fix it. That's all unnecessary. For that crime, you put a fine of 54 pannas. Panna was a silver coin, square. So all those people, they got lost their jobs. And the government will get the revenue and do construction work, roads, other things. So he substituted that. Now that concept of monetary compensation, Professor Becker, he got a Nobel Prize for that. He wrote a paper in 1968. for crime and punishment. Was one of the papers he got Nobel Prize on that. So he had already done that because it was a transfer, no resources are involved when you compensate in monetary terms. So he was really, really very far-sighted and very deep understanding of the whole situation. Like Adam Smith, he writes, that the whole economic system is like a machine. Well, people are not machines. They have all kind of other aspects to them. So Kautilya had the idea that there are machines and there are people, and they should be treated differently. Because machines don't have moral either problem. You can predict their activity, you cannot predict human beings.
Sir, I would like to interrupt here.
Yeah, Kautilya really had a deep insight into the working of the system. And he was looking at the whole system. That's why he wrote the economic administration, the judicial administration, and foreign affairs. They're all interdependent. You cannot have just one and not the other one. And that's why there are three parts to it. Some Western days say that these are three parts by different people. And I wrote somewhere that the concept of like opportunity cost, what is there in one chapter is the same thing all the way up to the end. And Adam Smith, one person writing a book, and he's inconsistent, totally inconsistent. And still you say that was written by one person, and here the person is totally consistent, and you are saying that it was written by three people or more people. So you have to fight all kinds of things. And when I started using all my these symbols to articulate Kautilya's ideas, they said, how can you use mathematics for that? Well, you are using for Ricardo, but I'm not committing any crime. At every step of the way, I have to fight, every step. Not only that, whenever I presented a paper at conferences, half the audience will leave in protest at how I'm promoting Kautilya. But what you believe in, never give up. That's the bottom line I learned.
Sir, I would like to raise two questions raised by
Yeah.
participants. And
So even
there are two interconnected questions. One is, in what way Kautilya Arthashastra related to present economic scenario? And second question is, how Kautilya Arthashastra was way ahead of Keynes, and in what ways? These are the two interconnected questions. If you light on these two questions, participants will be enlightened.
could you repeat it again? It's resounding. Yeah.
Dr. Murthy,
Slowly.
will you
Yeah.
give opportunity to some of us also to ask a question?
Yeah, I received questions from the participants. Same thing I'm revealing here.
Yeah, but do we have a chance to ask Professor Sihag?
Yes,
Say
sir.
that again.
Certainly. Certainly.
Okay, you carry on with the students' questions, then I'll ask.
Yeah, these two questions only. In what way Kautilya Arthashastra is related to in the present context? And second thing, in what way Kautilya Arthashastra is way ahead of Keynes? These two questions.
Somehow, this is resounding so much. It's not becoming clear. Send me in writing. Yeah. If you send me in writing, I'll answer the question. Say
Sure,
again,
sir. I'll send you mail their questions. So in your leisure time, you can now respond them. I'll send you through mail.
Sorry, really. Yes, somehow it's really
Murthy, you
so
can send
much.
to the chat. Through chat, you can send it.
Yeah,
Oh,
can
no.
I speak, sir?
No.
Hello?
No, really, it's a lot of
Sir.
my work gets stopped. As I told you, I'm a single track person, and I'm really doing something important. And any kind of these kind of things, there are two parts to it. One is creation of knowledge, other is sharing the knowledge. So sharing part, when I can't create anything, then I will come and visit your place and maybe stay there for a year. So that part has not started yet. Still, I'm in a mode of challenging lot of other ideas. So this maybe 3 years, 4 years. Okay, this is when
Can
I
I
can
ask
create something, challenge something. I'll continue that,
Murthy,
and
can I
then
ask?
I'll. Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm Manohar Rao, going to present tomorrow, but I have a small clarification. Can you hear me, sir?
Mhm. Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. See, first and foremost, let me congratulate you for a fantastic presentation and your authority on the whole Kautilya's Arthashastra and your erudite explanation is so useful to some of us like me. But I just wanted to have one clarification in the, from Arthashastra, as well as because a scholar like you can clarify to me the issue of, agricultural surplus. Because in many of Kautilya's writings in Arthashastra, many shlokas refer to the land as the most productive factor of production and the main source of wealth, artha. The main source of wealth, artha. So if economy has to run, there has to be an additional surplus arising out of agriculture. So I would like to hear from you a more comprehensive comment on that. Of course, not taking time, but in a brief kind of thing. Please comment. Thank you.
Yeah, actually in chapter 8, I talk about that. And some people, they said it's a labor theory of value, but Kautilya was way beyond that. I'll talk about that. In chapter 8, I talk about that the value of land is what man makes of it. So he gives prominence to labor also, not just land. And also that you need elephants to catch elephants. Okay, so he talks about capital formation. So land sure was there. At that time, agriculture was the most important activity. But he's not ignoring capital. He's not ignoring labor. So there's a whole thing in that, and plus governance and the rule of law. So he had a full picture of how the growth takes place.
Did you formulate any mathematical expression for agricultural surplus in Kautilya? Yes, I wanted to know exactly.
Kautilya was way ahead of what our government is doing, our economies are doing. Professor Hanumanta Rao, he was an expert on agriculture, and he talks a lot about agriculture surplus. Dr. Hanumanta Rao, whether he's alive or not, I don't know.
He is alive. He is in Hyderabad, my place.
Yeah, he was. I used to participate at Institute of Economic Growth when I was in the Indian Economic Service.
Yes.
And they talked about agricultural surplus, but they never talked about that farmers are not just going to give you the surplus, what they're getting back, what kind of manufactured products you are giving them. Absolutely no discussion. So I raised that question at that time in 1969.
Yes.
I asked him, and P.M. Dhar, he was the director there of Institute, and he said that he was going to ask the same question. Now, Kautilya, he answered that question. What kind of thing farmers like, and the city people should produce them, particularly like jewelry. It was popular at that time also. So those kind of things that consumers give them some, agriculturists give them some incentive. What kind of products they can buy. So he had both the aspects. And not only that, there was no market at that time. So he created the markets, market towns, where farmers can sell their product. So this idea of Mandi, which Modi wants to abolish, actually it was there in Kautilya's time. He was trying to establish that. So it was a full model, which nowadays, even Dr. Hamantara, I don't know how much he appreciated that, but he was talking only agriculture surplus. Yes, it is important, but you got to have the other side, the farmers, you got to entice them.
Thank you very
And
much. And I
yeah.
wish you that you please complete your book on Charaka and Indian medicine's contribution to the world. And I wish you all the best. Pray God that you will succeed.
Dr. Lingamurthy, try again. I might.
Thank you,
I
sir.
said you please complete your book on Charaka,
Okay.
Indian medicine's contribution to the world.
Well, it's a small thing. There are a lot of other people who are doing that thing, and I'm very happy that now there's a movement to go back to our roots. My goal is, a lot of people complain. I don't use much mathematics, but still people complain. That is too, mathematical oriented and all that. That I have to do to prove to the Western world that, like, if you remove mathematics out of economics, any economics, it will be like a flat tire. The air is taken out. So most of the contribution to economics looks like, mathematical contribution, not really economics concepts and so on. Okay, that part I'm trying to now address that part. That forget about that mathematical part. What are the real concepts? And how every Indian who is not even fully educated can understand the basic things. That's one part. Second part I want to show, like here, one guy, he came here, he had a drama on Kautilya, and what he showed that how Chanakya tried to make Chandragupta Maurya the king, and everything stops there. As soon as Chandragupta Maurya is installed on the throne, that's the end of the drama. My job started from that. That how did he govern? That's the part. Now at that time there was not any accounting. Now if you don't have any accounting, how you are going to compare the projects? Whether this is more productive than the other one. So this is one of the original contribution of Kautilya to develop the accounting system. And now they acknowledge him as the founder of accounting. My paper, that was my first paper, which was published in the Accounting Historians Journal, very reputed journal. That was my first article. And I'm not an accountant, but accounting people, they helped me write that. So that was his first contribution, that he was the first accountant. And now even the West acknowledges that. So he developed that first. How can you otherwise write the rest of the book? So my chapter 5 was basically the article which appeared before that.
Thank you,
So he
sir.
had so many contributions.
Sir, we will move ahead. Sir, Lingamurthy, we will move ahead due to time constraint. We are unable to take questions now. Our honorable Vice Chancellor as well Registrar have to leave the program, and they have to address some other program. So in this context, I request the Registrar of the University, today's guest of honor, I request Professor Baswaraj P. Donor sir to address today's program.
Dr. Lingamurthy, this is a wonderful idea, and you people are doing wonderful job. Okay, a lot of people, they talk about Kautilya. There's a Kautilya Engineering College, there's a Kautilya all this, then that Kautilya Academy, but nobody really practice anything related to Kautilya. So you are really, all of you are really the first one to introduce Kautilya formally, and lot of congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I can talk, okay, and talk, but you are the people who are doing it. So credit goes to you. Talking doesn't mean anything.
So we are there because of you, your research and your publications.
Yes,
you are carrying forward.
Yeah. So I'm delighted.
Thank you very much, sir. for a wonderful lecture.
I'm particularly, let me say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Let me add one more thing. My daughter, she has blue eyes, and I also have blue eyes. So she said that what's the source of that? So she got my DNA test done. And the pleasant news is my great grandfather came from Chennai. So I'm particularly really related to you people.
Oh, that's
Grandfather. So instead of people going from north to south, they were going from south to north. So all that RA invasion theory and all that is all nonsense. Because I'm a living example that I came from Dravidian origin from that area.
so
So
we are
that was really pleasant news to me.
yes, even for us also, sir. We are proud of that.
So thank you so much, and keep up the good work. And whenever I come to India, I'll try to come to your place
Oh, that's great.
if you invite me.
Yeah, definitely, sir. Please, always doors are open. We
Yeah,
are
because
blessed to have you.
when I see a lot of faces, a lot of young scholars, I get really excited.
Okay, sir.
And
Thank you, sir.
I got the award also for good teaching and all that, but that's my mother said that self-praise is the only recommendation when you don't have anyone else to recommend you. So I'm just saying that.
But we enjoyed your lecture, sir. It was really wonderful, enlightening.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
and keep up the good work. But all of you are really contributing a lot to our society.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Honorable Vice Chancellor to give presidential address.
Yeah.
Dr. M.B. Alagwadi, sir.
Yeah. Now I can go for my walk. 5 miles. Go for the train. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Good night. Okay.
Yeah. I think Professor Balbir Singh is leaving, I believe now. But before you leave, Professor Balbir Singh, kindly accept my sincere gratitude for taking your time to address all of us. I'm really delighted to hear you. I've been looking forward to this talk. And I thank Dr. Lingamurthy and his colleagues having invited you and given an opportunity to listen to your original works on Kautilya Arthashastra.
Thank you so much. Now, 3 years ago, University of Hyderabad, they invited me for one lecture.
Okay.
And what happened? They invited for one lecture, and I ended up staying there for 4 days and gave 4 lectures.
We'll be really delighted to invite you here whenever economics department decides to have you here, and even otherwise also please let us know whenever you are here. We are allowed to have you here because they have taken a very
people are wonderful. I really feel at home. And to tell you the truth, my feet are here in America, but my heart is in India. So naturally, I feel really good when I come there.
Yeah, going back to roots, what our Department of Economic Studies and Planning are trying to introduce this subject as a core subject. I'm sure they'll make a history by introducing this subject. This is probably a first of this kind in economics department. Certainly in I don't know other central universities have done or not, but we are taking a lead based on your work on Kautilya Arthashastra. Once again, I thank you very much for enlightening us on various aspects and comparing Kautilya's ideas with modern economists who won the Nobel Prizes. You illustratively, brought out very well all those concepts. I thank once again, without taking much of time, because your time for walking now. I wish.
Actually, I appreciated the opportunity because when I talk in Hindi, my wife, she's very good in Hindi, so she corrects me. when I talk in English, my children, they correct me. So most of the time I'm silent. So this was a good opportunity to talk.
Okay. That's really heartening, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you once again.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Balbir
Yeah.
sir, as well.
Yeah, we will be in touch. Yeah. We will
Sure,
be in
sir.
touch. Yeah. Okay.
Now I request our
Yeah.
student Amrita Pani to propose vote of thanks.
Yeah, so I'm closing it now, okay? All right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Amrita Pani.
Yeah. Okay.
Balbir Singh.
Thank you so much.
These are my books.
Showing his books.
So to all participants available.
Yeah, I
Thank
might
you
have
so
thousand.
much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, I might have thousand. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
On behalf of the entire Department of Economic Studies and Planning,
Yeah.
we thank you, sir, once again.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Good night.
And all the participants who have been supporting us, and all the faculties, Vice Chancellor, our dear HOD ma'am, Dr. Pushpa M. Savadati, and Dr. Lingamurthy sir, for giving us this opportunity to learn. The new education policy 2020 has instructed all the Indians once again to go back to their roots via mother tongues, via basic literature, local literature studies. So
Sure. Thank you. Okay.
I thank you, today's chief guest and keynote speaker, Professor Balbir Sihag.
thank you so much, sir.
As well, who inspired us, who motivated us to conduct this kind of program, Professor M.B. Alagwadi sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, and who gave us this space to conduct this kind of program, the Registrar, Professor Baswaraj P. Donur sir, and the bone of our department, and who always encourages the young faculty in the department, Professor Pushpa M. Savadati, to conduct this kind of programs. Really, we are grateful to our madam and the participants who have participated from across the country, from all universities. Without you people, it cannot be a great success, and it becomes success because of your active participation. So with this, I would like to thank everybody, and of course, we would like to thank our academic partner, Samvit Kendra, who has accepted to publish the deliberations. So with this, I would like to thank everyone, and tomorrow we will have the program at 11:30 of Professor J. Manohar Rao sir. Just now he has interacted with us. So tomorrow we'll start by 11:30, but only suggestion is that not to send your address in the text box. As well, please keep mute always your mic entire program, so that we can success the entire 3 days program without having any interruption. With this, I would like to thank everyone. Tomorrow we'll meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lingamurthy. And meet you tomorrow at 11:30. Take care. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lingamurthy sir.
Welcome, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure to